My wife begged me to join her perfect D and D group, but after 5 months of being ignored. For the last 4 years, my wife has been playing with a group that very quickly became close friends. Every Wednesday and Saturday night, she would go on about epic tales and stories that she and her group would get into. Seeing her eyes light up as she talked about her tiefling artificer and his growth and development made my heart swell. She had been wanting to find a group that matched her energy and encouraged creativity, and she told me she found it with them. I couldn't be happier for her. With permission from the Dungeon Master and players, I've sat in on some of their sessions on Discord, just listening and watching, and I found that everyone's energy was so infectious they bounced ideas off each other. The Dungeon Master allowed creativity and out-of-the-box thinking and even rewarded everyone for roleplay and solving issues without bashing people's skulls in. I was laughing with them, even felt my heartstrings tugged at emotional moments. I have to say the Dungeon Master was insanely great at storytelling and allowing everyone to be the character they wanted. Well, about 6 months ago, they ended their 4-year-long campaign and said goodbye to their beloved group. The Dungeon Master mentioned she was going to start a new season set in the same world with a new adventure 100 years prior to the events that kicked things off. She messaged me asking if I would like to be a player, and I enthusiastically replied with a hell yeah. I've been playing solo tabletop role-playing games for a while, because like my wife, I've had bad table after bad table, and this seemed like the best opportunity for us both to play together with perhaps one of the best tables we've ever had. Over the last 5 months, the Dungeon Master has been contacting me and other players both in the public Discord and privately about our characters and the world. I asked her for anything and everything she had on the world setting so that I could acclimate a character that would fit perfectly within it. I was given lore, and any questions I had she promptly answered. I asked her what kind of limitations she had or requests, and she said as long as you play a good aligned character, we're good. Apparently, she had some issues where people played evil and even neutral characters, and it caused a whole issue. She wants to tell stories of the hero's journey and not worry about every villager being killed for having a bad attitude or being looted of precious heirlooms. When I believed I had a good idea of what to expect, I created my character. We shared our character concepts like personalities, a bit of our backstories, classes, that sort of thing. There were so many unique traits that we all had, and it was looking like it would be diverse and amazing. The Dungeon Master wanted us to have a few secrets in our backstories that we wouldn't share with the other members of the group, making for character surprises in game. She did this in her last session, and they loved it, giving them moments to discover things about each other and some crazy roleplay scenes. My secret was that my character was abused and tortured by the gods of this world. Punishment for her bloodline from centuries ago. She was a tiefling runeblade warrior from an Asian-inspired home where she prayed to her ancestors to guide her. They were very spiritual and believed they could fight their inner curse by being better than their progenitor. Unfortunately, most of her family had been wiped out by the gods, leaving her and her siblings alive, but scattered. Her goal is to find them and confront the gods who had done that. The idea was fun, and we hashed out a lot of little details that would make it interesting within the story that was being told. I was all for it, and for the drama it would bring. We all had tie-ins to other characters, so I was thrilled to get playing. We had our Session 0, in which the characters had already started out knowing each other from attending the same academy. We took on a group mission, and it kickstarted our main story. It was a blast, and the roleplay was very good. And that's about where the fun ended for me. From that point on, everything became about mocking my character. We would go into other towns because that is where the story would take us. But every town apparently did not like tieflings. Every single town. We went to a place with humans, and immediately they refused to work with the group because they don't associate with cursed blood. We went to the city of elves where the bulk of the story took place, and I had to sit out for 95% of it. The elves scoffed at her, but they were willing to work with the rest of the group. Not a single non-player character would address my character, and my character wasn't allowed in any elven sacred places or inside their city. So she had to remain outside in the camp and fend for herself while the rest of the party was welcomed. I brought up the issues I had. I told the Dungeon Master that while I fully understand there might be people who are untrusting of her, maybe there could be a way that someone might take some consideration to the fact that she's not a bad person. She gave it some thought and said that sounded reasonable. The next session, a player found a potion that could change one's appearance and snuck out to give it to my character. My character then had a moment of shame. Shame for being who she was and realizing the only way she'd be accepted is if she changed who she was entirely. It brought her more strength to prove that she was good, to prove to the world and the gods that she was worthy of being seen as a person and not some monster. There was a scene where she drank the potion and looked human, and then it went to the rest of the group. The group had a moment in which they were involved with the elven children that lasted most of the entire session. It was fun as they got to engage with them and learn about some special alchemical potions, each of them being granted a bonus and buff for the remainder of their time there. When it finally came to my turn, my scene was of me getting into the elven city and finding one of the children who was part of the group and wanted to learn sword fighting. Since I was a runeblade, I felt I could help them and have fun one-on-one moment like the group had. Nope. As soon as she said she was going to help the dungeon master. Okay, you do that and have a fun sparring session. And then immediately went back to the group before ending the session in a 6-hour session. I played for 15 minutes tops. I messaged the dungeon master again, being as polite as I could about the frustrations. My wife and her friends are having so much fun, and it seems like when the dungeon master is focusing on them, everyone is laughing and having a grand time. When we spoke, she told me that the elves are untrusting of anyone who isn't elven, even more so with cursed blood. I told her there was an orc in the party who had a violent history, and the elves seemed perfectly fine with them. But somehow my character, who had been atoning for her curse for several generations prior, is seen as more untrustworthy. She explained that's just the way things are, but that's what my character was fighting for. I told her it wasn't fun to not be included in the group activities, and that I was feeling left out because of this. I asked if I could change the whole cursed bloodline plot and opt for something else or just reroll, and she said not to worry about it because she had a whole story built in for it and it would all make sense when we got there. It only got worse from there. Several more sessions and the characters have been guided by the elves to a ruined city where we were supposed to find out what happened. I picked up a relic and it burned me, so I had to take 11 radiant damage and received a permanent -1 to my strength score until I could get it cleared through some unknown means. My wife's character picked up the relic with a cloth and was blessed with light, gaining a permanent 1 to her intelligence stat. It was a relic of her character's goddess, which started off a major quest line. Downside, she was one of the Pantheon who deemed it necessary that my family's bloodline be wiped out. I didn't know what to do. Why would my character be willing to help this goddess who killed her family and kept her and 2 siblings alive just to suffer and mourn for the rest of their days? Why pit my character against the whole group? I asked my wife if this had happened before in their games, and she said it hadn't, but maybe the dungeon master was hoping for more drama. I told her I wasn't having fun and that I might just leave, but she wanted to play with me so badly. This was the first table we could sit at together and have fun. I'm not of the mindset to stay at a bad table just because, but it is. My wife and their previous campaign looked so fun. I had a hope that by keeping open communication, we could have a good experience. Things got mildly better with my character having some story beats. She found her older brother and saved him from an execution, and I had a little more role play from the other characters. But there were several moments where it felt like I was being picked on specifically. For instance, we had a scene where we were running from a giant, and the dungeon master asked me specifically, "Tanya, what shoes are you wearing?" Ogeta, yeah. You have disadvantage on your rolls, as the wooden platforms of your Geta are getting stuck in the crevices while running things like that. She wouldn't ask the others what they wore or how they did things to give them disadvantages. Just me. I wondered if it was because I was the only guy in the group, as this is an all-girls table. But I just can't help but feel as if I'm constantly being picked on while everyone else isn't being asked to make extra challenge rolls or have moments where they aren't even a part of the plot for several sessions. I've spoken with her several times and even brought up the options to reroll or just politely bow out. But she's told me she has some grand plan for my character that I'll love, and it ties into the overall story and the other characters. So leaving or re-rolling would ruin all that. I'm at an impasse here because my wife and her friends are having a great time, and if I leave, it will somehow ruin this great plot and their progress. But I dread sitting at the table twice a week for 6 hours a day and only getting to chime in when I get any acknowledgement from the non-player characters who are even willing to talk to me. Sorry this was such a long post. This has been sitting with me for the past 4 months since we started 5 days later. I'll try to make this much shorter than my last ramble. So a few things I want to clear up about this situation that many people ask me about. We were part of 4 tables previously. The first one was a group of college mates we had together that we thoroughly enjoyed, but it ended about 3 months in as the Dungeon Master was going through a divorce and never picked it up again after that. We had bad luck finding good tables. The first one, the Dungeon Master, was a very rules as written player and skipped all roleplay. Nothing wrong with that, but we found out that it wasn't necessarily what we were looking for. The other tables had some problem players whom the Dungeon Master didn't do anything about, so we left as it would kill the jive of all the other players around. My wife found this group on D and D Beyond. It was advertised as a novice Dungeon Master looking for players and not as an all-girls table. It just so happened that all the ones who contacted her were women. She had been telling me about her sessions pretty much from day one, as she was super excited to have found a table that worked for her. I stopped searching and did mostly solo as my new hobby, but I loved hearing about her adventures with other people. She told her group that she'd tell me about these adventures and how excited I was. The Dungeon Master then extended an invitation to me to watch them via my wife, and I could sit in their Discord. I personally asked her permission and the group's permission if I could. I fully intended to give them space if even one said no. They all agreed, and I sat in for the last 3 months of their session. We had all gotten along pretty well. At the end of their campaign, the Dungeon Master told me they were going to start a new one up a few months after that ended, and asked if I wanted to make a character. I was excited to join since they all seemed really chill, and I asked if that was okay with the group. Everyone agreed and was very welcoming. I came to the Dungeon Master with a different storyline than what we decided on. She liked my idea, but wanted to add a little flavor with the scenario between the gods of that world, saying it fit a vision she had for the story. She didn't tell me what that vision was, but for what I saw, she was a great storyteller, and I'm very flexible and can play into whatever she drums up for me. I did not know that this vision would then have me out of the game for almost all the social roleplay stuff. Sure, she came in handy for the mechanics and during fights, but any kind of roleplay with non-player characters or main story plot was non-existent. It wasn't always bad just during big roleplay moments and some strange roles that I had to make, but there were moments I had fun. It just wasn't the majority of it I stuck through because my wife enjoyed me playing with her and the group always seemed outwardly friendly. I was really trying to give it a shot. Now for the update. I talked it over with my wife and she understood how I felt. She admitted she was in a hard place because she loved this group so much, and it was the first time she felt like she could express herself, but also play in a game with me that was reminiscent of our first group. She agreed that we would have a one-on-one video chat with the Dungeon Master privately and discuss any possible ways to make this fun for us all. I even said that if she was going a certain way, to give me some info and I can play up to it. What I basically got was, I'm sorry you feel that way and can't handle some confrontation within game. My wife explained the confrontation as one thing, but I wasn't given a fair shot to prove myself. The Dungeon Master was not happy and said if I didn't want to play in her game, I could hang out with the boys and do my own thing right then and there. I got my answer and politely said she was right. I thanked her for her time and said that I'd be leaving. I told her she had full access to my character and whatever plan she wanted for her, and she thanked me before we ended the call shortly after that. She kicked my wife and me out of the Discord and blocked us. I feel so bad for my wife because she was honestly hurt, but she said she stands by my decision. This happened Wednesday after our game, and I know she's hurt. My heart breaks because I know she's hurting, but I told her she could take that same character and we could play a solo Dungeons and Dragons session together. Also, thank you for all the support. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get back to a lot of you who reached out personally. We had a lot happen on top of all of this and needed to unplug for a bit to unwind. I am sincerely grateful for the encouraging messages I've received. Relevant comments commenter one with the context given. It seems that even if not said directly, the Dungeon Master had a huge grudge against men. If you really told her politely that she could use your character and even thanked her, she shouldn't have punished your wife. It's sad, but your wife would be better off. If they can't respect people equally, maybe in some Discord server you can find another group overseas. Much luck finding a new group if you're up for it. It breaks my heart because she thought they were good friends. For 4 years, they chatted outside of Dungeons and Dragons about books and played games. Only one of the girls talks to her. I won't say her name in case anyone sees this and goes after her. It's been hard. These tables really make solid friendships, and I feel awful for ruining that for her. Commenter 2, I'm sorry your wife lost access to a thing that mattered to her, but honestly, I'm proud of you guys. That doesn't mean a lot from an internet stranger, but the fact that you stuck by each other despite the risk to something important is impressive and inspiring. Hope she didn't have to stick up for me. I know she was between a rock and a hard place, and I was fully intending on doing it. so she wouldn't get any heat. I think she felt bad for not sticking up for me sooner and knew this could be an outcome, but she did it anyway. I'll be spending the next few months making it up to her comment or two. Has anyone from the group reached out? One player has reached out to my wife to talk. They keep it very hush-hush, but I think it's what's kept her from being completely devastated. I'm not privy to what they talk about. Mostly I don't ask, but I at least hope that if there are any misunderstandings about what happened, that it gets cleared up. The fact one friend reached out might mean that others are starting to realize what's been going on. 1 week later, apparently the players found the thread and confronted the Dungeon Master about this. They started messaging me and my wife for our side and confronted the Dungeon Master. It looks like the Dungeon Master is now taking a break from all of the drama we caused. Final update, 3 days later, it's been a long and tiring week, but finally we have resolution to all of this mess. First of all, though, all of this was unfortunate. I do not blame anyone for wanting or needing a women's only space. I have made it abundantly clear that I would not have joined if even one of them had spoken up about being uncomfortable with me being there. I respect that. And if that had been the main reason, like I truly believe it was, I would have been perfectly fine declining if the Dungeon Master had messaged me and said she did not want me to join. This was a lot of the players' first group with Dungeons & Dragons, and so they admitted that they didn't know I was being treated unfairly. They thought I was just unlucky with the mechanics. They also said they were so used to their group dynamic that it was easy to get tunnel vision when it came to including me in the story, and that they hadn't thought anything about it. To be fair, I don't blame this on them completely. I've never played with one group for 4 years straight, but I can assume that when you're so used to your dynamic and someone new joins, it could be easy to tune them out, especially when I was often sitting out because the story revolved around them. At first, some of them thought that I didn't give the Dungeon Master a fair chance to give me a story. The woman who played the orc said that the Dungeon Master also changed her background so that her character was raised by occultists rather than the monastery idea she had originally. She said she enjoyed the new direction and it opened up a lot more angst story for her later. We had a bit of a debate about this, but ultimately they agreed that if I wasn't having fun with it, I should have been allowed to change the story or leave. I also asked the group about the reasoning behind letting me join. I had read a lot of comments here suggesting that my wife may have asked the Dungeon Master or that the Dungeon Master felt pressured, and I wanted to better understand whether she felt like she had to take me in despite how she felt. I was told that when my wife shared with the group that she had told me about their adventures and the compliments I gave, everyone, including the Dungeon Master, was excited to hear that an outsider was invested in their campaign. The Dungeon Master asked if I wanted to sit in and watch, and then when a new campaign started, asked my wife and the group if I would be interested in joining. I was told that in their private chats, she'd make occasional out-of-pocket comments like, "Let's show him how it's done." And I thought guys were supposed to be good at D&D when I'd struggle in combat due to some of the extra difficulties placed against me. In the end, the Dungeon Master got mad after being confronted, disbanded the channel, and blocked everyone. Now, they're asking me if I'd run something for them. I'm personally going to take a nice long-needed break from this whole thing, but I won't be opposed to possibly doing something they can enjoy in the future. Hopefully I can exceed their expectations.